again, and welcome to the Author Roundup. This special segment of the Book Connection show showcases emerging indie authors who join us for a discussion of their newly published books. Join us for a conversation with our next guest author. Welcome to Author Roundup. I'm Emma, one of your hosts for our show. I am here because I have a guest who has just published a book and is here to discuss it and her writing journey. Dr. Leah Hollon is a nationally recognized integrative physician, speaker, and educator with over 20 years of experience in uncovering the hidden roots of chronic illness through lineage trauma epigenetics. She is known for blending ancient wisdom with modern science to help those with rare or treatment-resistant conditions heal inherited imprints of disease. She's deeply committed to personal and collective healing and has a knack for making this topic accessible and tangible. Hi, Doctor. How are you today?
I'm doing so good. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be with you.
Yeah. So can you tell us about your book, the title, and just a little bit about it to get started?
Yeah, of course. So it's called Unwinding the Imprints of Disease, Transforming Intergenerational and Transgenerational Trauma. I know it's a little bit of wordy, but it basically tells you kind of everything in it. But I actually, as you had shared, I had been working with people for a really long time, treatment resistant things, and recognizing that there's something a little bit deeper, a lot deeper. And basically, I share within the book how traumas that have been unreconciled of our ancestors can actually transfer onto subsequent, parts of the lineage. So grandchildren and children and even great-grandchildren. And, we talk about this, in many different traditions in psychology, but now we actually have the science to back that up. So, we think about topics like, or people may say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And it's like, we've been saying this for really long time. It's an old expression, but there is some truth about it. If our ancestors were unable to reconcile some type of significant trauma, if it was severe enough, then it can imprint and affect the body. Makes sense, right? Like it'll affect the immune system and the neurological system and even the endocrine system. And we even know, in many ways that, when we are formed in utero, like we have to think about like what's happening as a child and that, there's those imprints even from our grandparents. So it's really a walk. I try to lead the reader on a walk of looking at their own family line or just understanding what's going on in a larger population of people, of just really being compassionate with ourselves of like things that we don't understand sometimes, like why is this happening or why am I having treatment resistant illness or these drugs aren't working, and maybe looking a little bit deeper. So it explores that and looks at that old wisdom plus the new science. So I really marry the two and truly try to make it really accessible for people. So it was a lot of fun to write. It was a long labor of love.
Yeah, I bet. And yeah, this topic is so interesting. I really haven't heard of anything like it before. And yeah, I was going to ask, is it individual traumas or is it you said ancestral, so like overall, just like in general, like our species in general, like
Oh,
years
Emma,
and years ago?
that's such a great question. So it can be individual. So like if you had a grandparent who, let's say they were in World War II and something happened, or let's say if it was a grandmother who was in the Holocaust. And so we can actually track that within the research of what can happen to children and grandchildren. But on a larger level, we know about cohort trauma. So as I just talked about, like the Holocaust, we actually can look at groups of people even with 9/11 and things like that. And we explore that. I explore that within the book of how we can actually see how it affects an entire cohort. And so knowing that, we are humans, we're designed in order to be in a community. And so I offer a lot of healing tools. It's not just about sharing what happens and providing some of the research and marrying that with old traditions, but also about the healing. And so how we heal, especially as a cohort, if there's been cohort trauma, even like the Khmer Rouge is another example of that, and even slavery, and how we can actually, as a cohort, come together, even children and grandchildren and great grandchildren, to heal more as a community. So I offer a lot of tidbits that are individual for the family, but then also as a larger group of people in the community.
Okay. And what is the response when people receive like information like this, or like
Mhm.
what is the response usually that about this topic and how you can dive back into, why treatment isn't working. What is like the usual like response about it? Are they skeptical? Are they like, oh, like, yeah, what's the response like?
That is such a great question. I think it depends on the population of people. If it's patients that are coming to see me,
Mhm.
they've been to 17 specialists. They've been to, they've searched everything high and wide. And I also teach within pharmacy as well. And so I know drug therapy pretty well too. So I can
Mhm.
sit down with them and have a conversation. At some point, it's like they are very receptive. They get it. Like there's an intuitive sort of knowing.
Mhm.
I mean, I think all of us, we meet someone for the first time and there's like this recognition, even though we've never really officially met them,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and there's this recognition and they feel so seen for the first time. And they're like, oh, yeah, I haven't told you this. Yeah, my great grandfather was, on a warship or, and they really can track it. Or my parents were covert agents, and no wonder, like, so I think it really helps them in formulating their understanding to where they can move forward in their health and their
Mhm.
disease so they can take some power into that. And they can also have more compassion for themselves so they aren't blaming themselves for not responding to therapy because it's on an ancestral level. It's on a spiritual ancestral level. So you can't just assume it's the person right in front of you in their body. It's bigger than that. It's the
Mhm.
family body and that spiritual and emotional body of the family. And so I think they feel very validated many times. I can think of one recently where I said, hey, I just want to share this with you. I'm thinking this. And she's like, oh my gosh, I have felt this all along. And then she kind of went into her story. I think for other folks that are just like out in the world and scientists and other doctors, and I share it with them and they just sit there and they're like, huh, and it's like you can see the wheels going, or just like
Yeah,
a layperson, if I run into them at an airport or something, like, "What are you working on?" And I'll share that with them, and they're like, "Wow, I've never thought of that before, but it makes sense." And so then I
yeah,
kind of share with certain analogies, they're very open, and they're like, "Wow, that makes a lot of sense." So, I'm not trying to, like, put some truth on someone, that may not be their truth, but I think it really
right.
resonates in folks that have really failed treatment because it's not on that physical level, it's on a much bigger level.
Yeah, yeah. And so what inspired you to write your book? Was there a personal or more was it clinical moment that sparked the idea?
I would say the first one was a clinical moment. I was sitting with a patient, and I'll give you a little snippet in it, but she's in the book, and she was my first real, and this was probably in my residency training. Then also as I was coming out of residency training, I saw her for a period of time, and she was having really bad dreams, really, really bad dreams, and and she was having horrible insomnia, and she also had a lot of anxiety too. And we
Hmm.
just, her psychiatrist, her counselor, myself, we just really weren't getting where we wanted to get for her. And she had been on all kinds of therapy for helping her sleep. And then I was like, wait a minute, whenever I have something that's not responding, I'm like, let's just stop, back
Yeah.
up and refocus. And I was just like, I'm just going to pretend like I've never heard your story before. We're brand new to one another. Let's just go.
Yeah.
And so she was sharing with me, actually I'm having these really bad dreams. And she hadn't told me that before. She just like, oh, I don't have really good sleep and da, da, da. And she goes into it and I was like, I'm hearing the dream and I'm like, mm, can't place this, right? And I said, anything else that's coming up? She's like, I feel like these aren't my dreams. And I just knew. I just like, it's the full body chills where you're like, okay, pay
Yeah.
attention. This is something.
Yeah.
And I said, I think you're right. And we went in and I said, I need you to do some investigation. I need you to ask some people in your family. I just inherently knew.
Hmm.
And I think as a naturopathic doctor, we are trained that recognizing that imprints can come down the lineage. We're kind of trained that way. So it's in our field. Even Chinese medicine providers and Ayurvedic providers, they're also trained in that we can see these imprints. Again, more philosophically, now we have the scientific research. But at that time I said, well, go back to your family and see what's going on. And she came back and her father had never told her these stories and they matched exactly. And I was
Oh my
like,
gosh.
okay, so if this can happen for this one person in front of me, she's not the only one on the planet.
Right. Yeah.
There's many others, right? And
Yeah.
so I just we really got to the bottom of things for her. It's a beautiful story within the book, but I kept seeing this on many, many people. Even like 2 or 3 months later, I had another patient come in, and it was just like the universe saying, "Okay, pay attention. This is what's happening."
Yeah.
And I will also say within my own family, I, had recognized a few things that recognized that were interesting, right?
Hmm.
And, so I think I was open to that information coming in, and then I would say later on, with me, I live in Richmond, Virginia. We
Hmm.
have some imprints of old things that have happened here, and maybe not some of our best history, but a lot of wonderful people here who are here intentionally to
Hmm.
just sort of cohort, trauma, and so, both of my great-great-grandfathers served in the war, but on both sides of the Civil War.
Hmm.
And so I just feel like, I'm kind of the person to deliver this message in a really
Yeah.
compassionate way of like, how can we be better to ourselves? How can we be better in medicine? How can we be better within our community? And the last thing was one day I didn't realize this. I was walking along some of the areas of the James River and I started getting like full body chills. And it was just like I felt these emotions and I was like, what is happening right now? And I didn't realize they had just set up the signs for the slave trail of like the historical markers of this is the slave trail. And I was in full, I mean, I was crying. And I
Hmm.
just recognized that these were the stories that needed to be told, and I just feel so grateful that I have the opportunity, to share that with larger groups of people, with my patients, with my
Hmm.
community, but, like, this is on a much bigger level, even, like, worldwide of how we can maybe be better to one another, how we can be better to
Yeah.
ourselves and recognize, like, intentionally, like, "Okay, at this moment, that's what's showing up, when people get
Yeah.
fearful or they act out, it's like, "What is going on?" Maybe there's something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I hope that I
Yeah.
mean, there were a lot of sequences of
Yeah.
events
No.
and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Definitely. And so you we've talked about it in your introduction and you briefly, but you have a very extensive background in naturopathic medicine and public health. How have those fields influenced the way you approach disease and healing?
Yeah, so I would say, my grandfather was diagnosed, and I'll share a little bit about this, it's also in the acknowledgments of the book, but, my grandfather was on a warship. He was in the Merchant Marines and,
Okay.
during World War II, and his, ship was sunk, and, he was exposed to a lot of things with being in within the Merchant Marines, lots of chemical exposures, and he did later on he was diagnosed with cancer, and unfortunately, he did pass from his cancer. But what was really interesting about all of that is, um, really, recognizing that I believed in prevention
Mm-hmm.
and obviously, I didn't know about this kind of prevention when it talked about the
Yeah.
linkage, but just very basic prevention of like, okay, making sure that we have less environmental chemicals. Well, that led me to research, and so I worked at the Massey Cancer Center for a period of time at VCU. I was getting my master's in public health. That I just really wanted to try to. Um, give people the knowledge and information to take better care of themselves. And so we would go into like rural parts of Virginia and teach people within manufacturing plants and that kind of thing about like diabetes and obesity and
Yeah.
cancer. I remember
Yeah.
being one woman and it just like broke my heart. She was a mother of four, African American, worked in the veneer plant there, and she had cancer, bone cancer. And she's like, no one ever told me that what I chose to eat made a difference in my life. And I just remember that moment of
So
feeling
sad.
so many people would do better if so many people's health would be better if they just knew and they're open. They just don't
Yeah.
know. So I think that that really set a passion in me of like wanting to help people remember who they are and how to take care of themselves. So got my master's in public health and worked in actually intentional injury at the ER there and with the forensic nurse examiners of just seeing that and just really wanted I believed in prevention. And so when I looked at I would say more of a Western medicine standpoint, there wasn't a lot in prevention. I mean, yeah, there is some, but it just wasn't the depth of what really called to me. So I
Yeah.
looked into that and looked into naturopathic medicine, and it was the whole thing of that doctor as teacher. It's not doctor as telling you what to do, it's doctor as teacher. And
Mhm.
also about prevention, and it just really aligned in the innate ability that the body has to heal. Like that's one of their tenets. And I was like, that's my medicine. That's where we're going. So I would say that, the naturopathic medicine really has just been such a perfect fit for me. And of course, we learned drug therapy, minor surgery, we're seen as primary care in certain states. But, homeopathy, physical medicine, nutrition, and then also herbal medicine. And I loved having lots of different tools to choose from instead of just one thing, either surgery or pills. I just felt like
Yeah.
a lot of people, they're so interested in taking care of themselves. So if you think about that, it was just like a natural progression of seeing all these different ways of prevention coming in and recognizing that prevention was on a deeper level, even within the family unit. And these messages that have been sent and trickled down as an opportunity of healing. And I think those of us who have carried some of these imprints were the proxy. It's our role and responsibility, but also, I think, honor to clear the line. And so
Mhm.
I was just I hope that answers the question, but,
Yeah, it
really
does.
believing in that prevention and really
Yeah.
believing in autonomy is what led me into a lot of this, and just being open. I think sometimes when you sit with a patient, you never know where the conversation's gonna go, and it
Yeah.
leads into the most unexpected ways, like, especially children, they'll tell you all kinds of things, and you're like,
Mhm.
"Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I have a totally." So, that really is, I would say, just has been a natural fit of being open to how prevention and how innate truths that are written on our bodies and even in nature show up.
Yeah. Yeah. And, preventive medicine and research, it's something like the diet that you mentioned about the woman, like I
Mm,
feel like we get so wrapped up in like our lives and, just life and everything. And then, yeah, it's like, I feel like we forget to like sometimes truly take care of ourselves and understand that, yeah, there are preventative measures. And it's so sad, like when, it gets to that sort of treatment where it's like, okay, it's a fight or flight type of treatment,
right,
right? It's sad when it has to get to the,
right,
so
right.
far gone and things. So yeah, preventative medicine, I think, yeah, like you mentioned, is like so important. And I feel like a lot of people need to acknowledge that for sure, me included, just in our everyday lives, right? Like,
Yeah,
like we
totally.
eat and, like the intake of, like certain things. So yeah, it's really interesting. So your book opens with a powerful question of what if the illness you carry didn't start with you, which I think is a very, like important and interesting question. What does that mean in the context of epigenetics and ancestral trauma? Can you elaborate on that a little more?
Yeah, we could go in so many directions.
Yeah.
So, Um, well, anything from when we talk about epigenetics, and I think most people are very aware of this now. 5 years ago, when I was talking to people about this, they're like, "Epi, what?" So I think almost everybody out there has heard something around it. So again, just epi is around, and genetics is around the genes. And so
Yeah.
it's not just the genes that are dictating what's happening. It's a program. I like to think of it like a manual. It doesn't mean you have to
Okay.
follow it exactly, right?
Mhm.
And so I think we have like this blueprint that we are given from our ancestors. And again, if there's an issue that happens, let's say a trauma that they didn't resolve, it's like there's a bookmark that gets put there.
Mhm.
And the bookmark is through something called mutations, where basically the body switches one protein for another and says, we didn't have what we needed here. There was an issue. Okay, we're going to switch this protein. And all of us have mutations, or what we call single nucleotide polymorphisms, which is the long word for SNPs or the long word for mutations. And it doesn't mean that it's going to be catastrophic. It just means that we switch one protein for another. Now, sometimes they can be catastrophic, but mostly they are not. We have backup systems, which are really cool in our body. It has this amazing intelligence. But, it's this idea of, again, the genes don't dictate everything. The environment is a big part of it. So our environment is not just like the temperature around us, but
Mhm.
also the people around us. And
Yeah.
emotions. And I think a lot of people for so long, especially the way medicine and even I would say within religion to some degree is like religion took the emotions and the spirit, and medicine took the body.
Hmm.
So where's the lineage? And so there's nothing to really marry that. And so I think this beautiful part of epigenetics really tries to pull science and or medicine and those more other natural sciences together. And
Hmm.
so when we look at some of the research, I mean, we can see where if an injury occurred to a parent that was pretty significant or a grandparent, it can affect hormones, like basic hormones like estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, right?
Hmm.
And so that can then affect other parts of the body that relay that message on to the offspring of like, hey, stranger danger, watch out. And like I have some families where maybe nothing specifically happened that they know of, but they always feel alert and on edge, like anxiety for unknown reasons. And sometimes we can go back and track that. So we can actually follow this epigenetics within multiple systems of the body. Like neurological system, like through neurotransmitters. We can track it even through brain imaging. Isn't that amazing? So I kind of talk
Yeah.
about that in the book. We can follow it through those hormones I was talking about, but not just, some of the sex hormones, but even through cortisol and DHEA. We can follow it through immune proteins. So even like cancer. And so like, we have talked about a lot of trauma that can happen for people like PTSD. And so PTSD is probably the main one that I talk about because that's really where an injury has not been able to be cleared appropriately for
Yeah.
someone, and it's enough of a hardship that it sort of opens things up, right, for an opportunity. So when PTSD happens, it really does change a lot of things for the individual person unless they get appropriate therapy, which I've seen healing for people,
Mhm.
significant healing for people from war, from rape, from alcoholism, from injury, from car accidents. And so you can clear and heal
Mhm.
PTSD, so that it doesn't transmit. But this whole idea around epigenetics, I think it serves as sort of like little tags for us to pay attention of again an invitation, especially
Mhm.
if you're kind of tapped into the family as a proxy to kind of clear that. So I hope that answers the questions
Yeah,
a
it
little bit
did.
around where we can see that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and also it's very interesting like the way you talk about these patient stories in a sense because like it almost feels like there's like a sense in a little portion of it that's like therapy or like
Mm.
therapeutic.
Oh
Like
yeah,
you
sure.
talk about like these traumas and things where it's like people are it's like a toddler who is having like, a meltdown and like you're trying to get to the root of the problem. That's what it makes me think of because I'm a mom and like it makes me like think of that.
Yes.
Where it's like your the patient story earlier. It's almost like therapeutic too, where they're seeking like, actual treatment, but then also it's kind of like therapeutic for them to like
Yeah.
acknowledge, certain things in their past and why they are the way that they are and what they're going through. Does that make sense?
It totally does. I
Yeah.
think it's a wonderful analogy of, I think a lot of doctors are becoming more informed around trauma-informed, care. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of providers, especially counselors, have been doing that for quite some time. But,
Yeah.
I feel for a lot of my colleagues in, I would say Western medicine, they have 7 to 15 minutes to sit with a patient. I mean, how can you really
Right.
be
Yeah.
the provider you want to be? um
Mhm.
I have so much compassion because it's so hard for them. They have so much on their shoulders.
Mhm.
And so I think that, when you talk about it's like when you talked about a child, who falls or bumps
Yeah.
their knee or something, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh hey babe, yeah, like you're not going to be like, okay, so like, and that's
Right.
what happens a lot of times. And so if you're open it, and if you're open and you allow space, just even for the patient to breathe. I mean, even many times the medical system, I mean, I think we've all been in the medical system, and I am too. I have my own doctors, and sometimes it can be a little intimidating. You walk in and you're like, I feel a little vulnerable, and you're like, it can feel very sterile. And so I think you're right. When patients come to see me, there's a significant intention that anything from when the door that they open or the phone call that they make And the first time they sit in the waiting room, like, it is a totally different experience where they feel like they can breathe for the first time. And because
Mhm.
I think that a lot of people forget that they have a lot of power to heal themselves. And so, white walls and some type of um, institution or office setting is never going to feel very, healing
Great.
for them. It feels very sterile. So I think I'm very intentional about my language. I'm very intentional about what we set up for my folks here so that when they come in, they actually feel like they can breathe and like, oh, wow, this is a part of healing that I never knew existed. And so they can really
Yeah.
go deeper. And it is, we are trained in some counseling techniques also in our training as a naturopathic doctor, but you're right. Sometimes they come to me and they're like, "I just love coming here to talk to you,"
Oh.
because they really do feel like, and it's a lot like a family. We care for our people as though they're family, because they have been through a lot. Most of them have been traumatized by the time they come here. Most of the people I see have stage 4 cancer or they have autoimmune disease, and they've been through it. And so really helping them understand if they have their own trauma, right? That's one level. We have to work on that because we
Mhm.
recognize the immune system is not going to work the same if trauma is still in the body. So, yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you have patient stories in your book. How many stories are in your book, and why did you choose to include patient stories in your book?
Mhm. Well, I think stories are so inspiring.
Mhm.
And I think it helps us. I mean, I think it helps all of us when we have someone we could relate to,
Mhm.
story, and of course, sharing stories of truth and inspiration. I mean, some of the stories, when you read them, I mean, I'm just so proud of them, of how far they've come and how they've healed themselves, and,
Mhm.
so, I mean, I'm proud of them. I'm like, and of course,
Yeah.
share with them like, "Hey," a lot of my patients have known for a while that I've been writing this book for a number of years, and so
Mhm.
I reach out to them like, "Hey, listen, I would really like to share your story. How would you feel about that?" And they're like, "Do it. People need to know," and so I think the best way for people to learn is sometimes through someone else's story. I mean, yes, you can learn through the research and caveats that I offer and that kind of thing, analogies, but I do think some of the best ways we learn and mirror and also model our own healing is from true personal
Mhm.
stories.
Yeah, I agree. And so what are some common patterns you've noticed in patients whose symptoms were connected to generational trauma?
Oh, yeah, that's great. So I would say in some cases it could be a learned helplessness, um, deep grief that
Mhm.
they are not able to verbalize, because again, it goes back generations. Um,
Mhm.
I would say for some of my families with genocide in the family, there's a lot of anxiety.
Wow.
Makes sense, right? So if you come from a lineage of genocide or a lot of fear, right, for your survival, you don't sleep very well and you have a lot of anxiety, even
Mhm.
if the parents haven't told you or the grandparents haven't told you. So I can see that many times of just like there's this edginess. And sometimes it can be disassociation, I would say, for like one of my patients who uh, their parents were involved in very dangerous things on the planet. Um, there is a fair amount of disassociation even years later. And I would also say a lot of chronic illnesses. So, like, they heal from one thing and then they can't heal from another, and then they get another infection, then another infection, and then another infection.
Mhm.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So I would say that those are some of them. I mean, cancer is a big one, because sometimes what happens in the family line is a child learns young that they are responsible for their adult parents, whether it's true or not true. It's a belief pattern. And they
Mhm.
believe that they're supposed to take care of their grandparents and their parents. And
Mhm.
there's almost the child grows up so quickly that they're an adult by age 7.
Right. Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
see that often. And so, what we know in the literature, and I talk a little bit about this, is that certain types of neglect and abuse show up and are associated with certain types of cancer, even up to the amount of the diagnosis of the cancer, the staging of the cancer, and how many lymph nodes are involved.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So, like, again, if you're going into, and I have a lot of friends who are also oncologists, hematologists and oncologists, and again, if you're only given the framework of this drug and this thing and doing these labs, yes, they're doing a great job on the material matter. But if you don't have these other pieces behind, a person may only get so well because it's not really just right the mechanical pieces.
Yeah.
Introduction happened under the emotional and spiritual body, and sometimes also that lineage body. So it's
Mhm.
really important. And what we also know about, you asked a great question about how else do I know? So in the literature, we see that with the hormones I told you about. So if mom or dad, actually, mom or dad have a significant trauma that they have not been able to heal, they will make certain hormones that will flatline or go up, and then guess what? The child mirrors it exactly.
Yeah.
Mirrors it exactly. That's the message.
So
So what
sad.
does that do to their immune system, to their endocrine system, to reproduction, to right? And so it's such a beautiful thing to really realize that we're the scribe. We're like
Yeah.
the scribe of our family, even if we may or may not know it. And even for those who, maybe they've been adopted or they're not living within their own biological family, they still have those known imprints. Like I work with kids that have been adopted, who have been in the welfare system, who have also been in the foster care system. And I can see imprint. I mean, like even kids that are 2 months old or 6 months old, I can see
Mhm.
imprints on them. And if we don't work on that, that affects their feeding and their growth and their
Yeah.
birth weight. I mean, I should
Yeah.
say like, their developmental stages. So we look at low birth weight as one of the markers as well as lineage imprints too.
Okay.
It's remarkable.
So what would be the steps, I guess, if you know someone that has trauma, multiple kinds of trauma, generational trauma, what would you say would be the first steps? Because I know your book is educational, but it offers practical tools for healing. But what would you say to someone who doesn't want to pass that, like you mentioned? So what are some things?
I think the first thing of that intention makes such a difference. I think when people recognize what's going on, it kind
Yeah,
of shifts the whole energy. I mean, I can talk about energy, right? A battery has energy. We can measure energy. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. But we
yeah,
recognize that there is certain energy around certain individuals, around plants, around nature.
right.
We have ultraviolet light, we have microwave, we have even 5G, at this point. So we can't see those things, but we can measure them in science. That's a real thing. And so we do recognize that when people first recognize that truth and that, let's say again, that does truly mirror for them. Just because people learn about this doesn't mean that that's them, that that's happening, right? So if they recognize it's happening, I think just recognizing that that's going on and that they have a true intention to change and move from
Mhm.
here. I think that's sort of like, when you think about Gandalf from, Lord of the Rings,
Lord of the
you
Rings.
shall not pass. I kind of think of
Yeah,
that like it's an energetic signature of like, I got it.
yeah,
And I think what happens is we start getting to work one-on-one if they're patients. But in the book, like I give tangible things of like, now what do you do? I give them tangible things of, some people they gravitate more towards art, other people it's more of talk therapy. For other people, they need to be in nature. And so I really try to give like a smorgasbord of like ideas that they can do that really resonate for them. There's no one way. There's
Mhm.
multiple ways of clearing this. And so, the research shows it can be up to 6 to 7 generations that we know this within the literature. And now, if we look at smaller animals, not humans, like even worms and things like that, it can be up to 13 or 14 generations that we know. But for humans, what we know, it's about 6 to 7 generations. So, I think just having that conscious awareness and, it doesn't have to be heavy. I think that's the other part. People are like, oh my gosh, it has to be this and it has to be just perfect. And I have to,
Right.
and if you feel called to a ceremony, that's great. Now, for some people within their religious upbringing, like that
Yeah.
natural thing. Like there's a lot of things that are built into community that they can be very intentional. And I think
Yeah.
for when we think about these intergenerational and transgenerational imprints, whether it was from Chernobyl or if it was from slavery, is that, I think about for many African Americans within this country that churches were the things, like religion was the thing that allowed them to truly heal on a deep, deep level, and that was something that could not be touched.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, And
Yeah.
so I think wherever someone is, and I have some people who they're atheist and like them being in nature is really where they want to be, or they just want to
Yeah.
talk about it. So I don't think that there's a right or a wrong way. It's just what works for each person.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see like where it could be heavy also because, like individuals have trauma. And so when you put two people together, there could be traumas on, the father's side and the mom's side. And if you have kids, it's like there's so much trauma. But like just, yeah, like you said, there's definitely things you can start doing today to begin that unwinding process. So I'm sure listeners will appreciate that and know that there's things that they can do. So
And
yeah.
I encourage, young families or young folks that are thinking about having children in the future that
Yeah.
they can do the work now, and it's even more
Right.
powerful. But,
Yeah.
depending on what you believe in quantum physics, what we do now may affect other things in ways that we don't think,
Yeah.
haven't even thought about imagining. But I would say, even if you do have children or your grandparents now, there are things that you can do for your grandchildren and great grandchildren, even of just being very intentional with them and like working on those deep parts. And you'll notice what's so cool is when the first person of the family or the proxy starts doing the work, all of a sudden people start sniffing around like other family members, or like,
Yeah.
like a nephew will come up or a niece will come up, or somebody will say something like, "Hey, or like a grandfather will start talking like, I've never told you about what I did over in, Cambodia." And you're like, "Okay, I should pay attention." Because as soon as
Yeah.
one person does the work, the family feels that through this like red thread of connection with everyone, that they will start speaking up. And so you can't imagine the healing that happens. Just
One person. Yeah.
once, yeah, one person just starts inquiring.
Yeah. And also, yeah, like you mentioned, just wanting to put in effort and work and to understand how you can improve yourself and really understand your trauma and not, be like in denial about it. Oh, like, well, yeah. So yeah, I
Yeah,
feel
and I think just having compassion for yourself, I think
yeah.
and just knowing that it takes a little bit of time. I mean, I have seen healing happen in an instant for people. Once they get it, it happens very
Oh,
quickly.
wow. Hmm.
But, especially if there's been chronic layered PTSD for a person, like I work with a lot of military as well. And then let's say, for instance, the reason they went into the military was because it was really scary at home, let's say.
Hmm.
And
Oh,
then their grandparents were alcoholics and great grandparents, like, just not, there was a really challenging family
yeah.
line. um, it might take us up to 18 months to really have a solid, stability in place to where if something were to be thrown at them, they don't have like setbacks, like whether it's in lab work or that kind of thing. But
Hmm.
usually I find within, about 2 years, like things are pretty solidified, but people notice things within weeks already, just in the emotional body. And that's what I love
Yeah.
about some of the other therapies that are more energetic, is that they can reach to some of the dream states that we see within the literature, that even the Veterans Affairs has noted that children and grandchildren can have the dreams of
Yeah.
their
That's wild.
family member that had the trauma in war.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so on that portion of exploring, what can someone begin exploring, or how can someone begin exploring their ancestral or family history in a way that supports healing?
I think that's going to depend on each family, and each individual. I think I'll give a few ideas for people. So, some folks, they recognize, they're just well aware that something's going on in the family. And it's just the sniff test isn't just quite right.
Yeah.
I think, journaling, and I talk a little bit about this, like writing things down can be very important.
Mhm.
I think it'd be really helpful. I
Right.
think meditation is a huge one of just getting information and knowing what's right for you. And I think focusing really on yourself first, right? Healing first starts within. It's so
Yeah.
easy for those, even myself in medicine, of like my role in love is to care for other people.
Yeah.
And healing always starts within. So I think going to those places and just with tenderness and compassion is really helpful, um,
Hmm.
no matter, what's going on. And I think for those that have maybe a harder time knowing where to get started, and I give this in chapter 9, about here are the first steps to take, and
Hmm.
if you want to kind of help with that, and I give some ideas about that early on in chapter 9. But I think for those that are really have had a lot of trauma and they don't want to know what happened, that's totally fine too.
Hmm.
And again, it goes back to healing within and not becoming a martyr,
Yeah.
becoming a saint, right? Not be that is not what we want. We want reconciliation. We want peace. We want calm. We're not fighting anymore. We're moving into peace and that frequency of peace. And so I think there are many different ways. Again, and we talk about many roads to Rome, right? Like I think
Yeah.
it's a lot of different roads. But for those of my folks that don't know their families who have been adopted, I mean, I have lots of kids, as I said, that have been adopted that I work with, and there's a number of cases that I give within the book about how ill they were when they came to me. I mean, I don't even see them anymore because 'cause they're doing so well.
Aw, that's
Like,
great.
it's so beautiful. I mean, just to think about, we know I've had a number of kids that they were under the influence of drugs when they were born, anything from meth to cocaine to opioids to, and them having severe withdrawal and being able to help them to where that they can actually feed within the same day
Mhm.
or, and then they can meet those milestones. I mean, that there's nothing bigger than that, right? Like
Yeah.
knowing that those children are now being set up on a physical level for them. And again, they still have imprints. Like I have one when she feels insecure, she does certain things. And so I have to like go in and we have to go in with a lot of compassion and she's now in her 20s, and I started seeing her when she was, really young and
Aw.
um but she knows where and teaching them of how to do self-regulation. So I think for those people who they don't know their family line or they're not interested or maybe they are interested but they don't know, you can even look at your family tree. Just like
Mhm.
again, sometimes you will know, especially in this world now, you can find anybody through pretty much anything. And that's happened for some of my patients before where they were adopted and someone reached out because they found them through like some type of genetic testing. Um,
Mhm.
the reason I share that is we do have that happening where people they want to know how to clear their line. And I think the most important thing is you could go to the family tree and look at it. There's all kinds of different .coms that you can do that on. And
Mhm.
just like sit with gratitude. It might have been a hard upbringing that you had coming in or whatever, but like you're here for a reason. You're
Mhm.
here for a reason. There's something that you bring to the table. And even if it's really hard to get out of maybe the trauma response, I need you to find one thing of gratitude each day. Look at that
Mhm.
family tree and find someone on that family tree that you can send love to that may not be on the planet anymore that you relate to. And I think that that has been really helpful for my people and they learn about them. And I have one, I actually talk about her in the book, and she found out about some of her ancestors and what they were doing. And some of it was not very good. And then
No.
one of them that she really gravitates to. And so she has used that in her healing because she was a veteran and she's had a lot of trauma. And her story is quite remarkable. And she has been able to heal a lot of her stuff just by attaching to one family member that she just loved their story and tried to learn everything. And my last visit with her, she brought in a picture book of this one family member that she
Aw, that's
met.
so
And it's
sweet.
just so sweet. Again, just bringing that love and compassion and gratitude
Yeah.
into your
Yeah.
existence now.
Very cool. And so looking ahead, do you believe the medical field is shifting toward a more holistic view of medicine that includes those like generational and emotional layers?
I do.
That's
I
good.
do. It's interesting. I share that for a couple reasons is one, I think after COVID, a lot of individuals, including doctors, medical providers, healthcare workers, and patients said something didn't go right here. We didn't do this quite right
Mm-hmm.
on many levels. And they realized that they want to be more involved in their own health journey and they want to have a say in things. And I think for a lot of providers, they got out of medicine. They were done. They were completely done
Mm-hmm.
because they realized it was just mechanical medicine, and that is not what they want to do. So they've left, unfortunately. They've retired early, or they've just left, or they've gone into concierge medicine because they get to now do what they really want to do in medicine and why they went into medicine years and years ago, of that they really wanted to help people. So that 7 to 15 minute plan is not helping. That's not what they believe in.
Yeah.
So when I share this with other doctors and providers, they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is great. This is so perfect. Like, I know one of my patients needs to come and see you, or they need to read this book
Aw.
because this explains why I can't get anything to work for them." So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And so when did you start writing your book and how long did it take you to finish it?
Oh, Emma. So, um, it has been a large labor of love,
Yeah.
a
Oh,
very long labor of love. Um, to be honest, it's been 8.5 years since I knew that I was supposed to write the book,
oh wow.
and maybe almost 9 by the time it really kind of picks up. And I know that it will be a landmark book. I know that it will because it's such different information, but it's a
Mhm.
truth innate in us and in nature, obviously, that this is what's happening. I mean, even, different tribes on the planet have talked about this. They've known about this, and now we're marrying the science that we call science in 3D with these old ancient truths, right?
Yeah.
And so it took a while. I will say that I had probably half of the book written within about 9 months.
Oh
Um,
wow.
which was great, but, when you're taking care of patients and that kind of thing and running a
Yeah.
business and teaching
Yeah.
and
You've
all
got a
that,
full life.
but what happened was COVID,
Yeah.
and because we were taking care of people in such intimate ways, right?
Mhm.
We have people that we see their families, they have 2-year-olds in the family and 98-year-olds as grandparents, so,
Mhm.
we were really trying to do the best we could, so I it was 4 years I didn't touch it.
Okay. Mhm.
And so, in the last 18 months or so, that's really when I was like, "Okay, do or die, we're
Now or
going."
never.
Yeah. And I think, it's so easy to sometimes choose someone else, and to be like, "Oh, because I love my patients," and you're in the flow, and then you're like, "No, I
Yeah.
gotta do this." Like, the world
Yeah.
needs this information. And when I talked about this 8 years ago, people looked at me like I was three-headed. And now when I talk about it, they're like,
It,
"Oh, yeah, I totally get that." And it's
oh
so
my
maybe it was for a
gosh.
good reason of just like
Yeah,
it.
that it came out now. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so and I went through a couple I hired an editing team to actually help me, with it, and so lots of revisions to really make it what it is now, and so I feel really grateful for that process, but it just
Yeah.
it takes time when you have an editing team because you're trying to take what they're saying, you're trying
Yeah,
to
back and
really
forth too.
really put yourself in the seat of the reader, and it was such important information, I wanted to get it right
Mm-hmm.
for the
Yeah, of
reader.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you enjoy the writing process? Did you have a sort of routine when you were writing it?
Mhm. Yeah, I did. The beach is my place. So,
Oh,
I'm not too
nice.
far from Virginia Beach, and so it's like my creative spot. I can get away, there's no interruptions, whether it's
Yeah.
business or patient care or family and that kind of thing, and I just hunker away at the beach,
Mm-hmm.
a little place, walk the beach, do my meditations. It just helps me stay involved. So I would say my
Yeah.
meditations have been the best help for me and finishing, like, seeing myself finishing. I remember like imagining what my first book signing would look like and signing my name and
Oh,
like just
manifest.
feeling the
Yeah.
gratitude. And, so like I practiced a lot. I did a lot of mental rehearsal, and just making sure that it was right. But I think that there are times that I would beat up on myself because it was taking so long, and I just felt like I wanted to have it in there, but
Mhm.
I think in retrospect, it was like the universe had its own time.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah. And was there a part of your book that was easiest to write or part of
Yeah.
your book that was hardest to write?
Chapter 5 was tough. That was a tough one for me, because I feel like, I want people to have so much information, but I don't wanna, give them too much, and so I really had to that was probably the hardest part. I think, the other part was, with the editing, really wanting to try to have my chapters as similar as possible in size,
Mm-hmm.
and that was, so really putting some good thought in that and having to restructure things. I think restructuring can be really hard
Hmm.
sometimes. The easiest part, that you may have asked about, there were 2, or the funnest part to write. I love the healing therapies. Like, I could have kept writing and writing and writing and
That's
writing.
the positive part. Yay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that, yeah, that was a lot of fun. I only did therapies that were really easy for anyone to do, that they didn't have to, like, take a pill or something like that. It was just something
Mhm.
that would be very accessible for the majority of people, regardless of how healthy or unhealthy they feel. So I
Mhm.
really enjoyed that part of it. And I would say, honestly, in chapter 8 about the cohort trauma, to really share how not just, our trauma that we have can get imprinted somewhere into the lineage, and how we might inherit that from our ancestors, even up to 6 or 7 generations, but then how a cohort, and how, like, when we see things like social media or people get triggered in ways that we can't imagine sometimes, where that might be coming from. An
Mhm.
old memory, an old program. And I really enjoyed getting to write chapter 8. And especially I write a poem at the end of chapter 8 about healing, and it's
Oh.
called the James River. And so
Oh.
that I don't know.
Perfect.
Every time I read it, I get choked up, and I just feel
Mhm.
like that is a really important, it's almost like I call it the portal of healing, basically, the James
Mhm.
River. And how we shift an old vibration or energy
Mhm.
into where we are now, and that
Mhm.
we're more aware of these old imprints, so that we aren't as reactionary and we aren't as inflamed and irritated and ill, right? Like, when
Mhm.
we're inflamed, it's not just inflamed here, we're inflaming our body. So do we really want to be inflamed and all that?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, right? Like, how can we really be more of a civilized society? Yeah.
Mhm. And so how did it feel after, lots
Oh,
of meditations and years of hard work, did it feel to hold your book and see it for the first time?
yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked. So I do have it with me. Yeah, carry it with me.
Yeah, as
The
you
way
should.
as I should, that's right. I wow. I remember when I got the message from my self-publishing company, and they said it's done. And then I told my team, and I get this email saying it's available,
On
on our site and also on other things. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, it's like really happening. And I have to be honest with you, it was surreal. I mean, I felt like
yeah,
different timelines were coming together. I had to like really sit down for a bit of time
yeah.
because I just, yeah. And the cover is beautiful. They did an amazing job of capturing my vision of it. And I love it. So it was really special. I got to open it for the first time with some of my colleagues up at a conference in DC.
Oh,
So I
nice.
sent it to the Amazon Prime, box or whatever, and
Uh-huh.
I picked it up and I brought it back, and I had all my colleagues around me, and I opened it up and I was just like enamored. I was just so happy, and it just felt so good. And then I've been in the recording studio and finished the audio book just
Oh,
recently.
lovely.
And that was, like, beautiful and magical. It was like going to Disney for the first time as a kid. They have all the buttons and the gadgets, and they make things sound beautiful, and you have this huge
Yeah.
tick in your face, and you're like, "Oh, wow, that was my stomach growling, okay." Um, but it was really beautiful. I had amazing people take care of me at Balboa, and also amazing people take care of me at my editing team, and also at In Your Ear Studios, when I was recording that. And I'm getting to listen to it now and read it at the same time. And
That's
so
so
taking it
fun.
in now is really yeah, just it was a labor of love. And there were
Mhm.
certain times I could just tell it was like just information coming in that was just needing to come in,
Yeah.
universal energy, and needing to get out of my own way. And then now reading it, and it's just like, wow, how did that all come together? All those different times of sitting down and editing and re-editing and writing and
Mhm.
unwriting and just staying with it. And I think that's what I would say for other writers is, it doesn't, there's a lot of people, it takes us 5 to 10 years to write a book, especially
Mhm.
something that's really, monumental and very dear
Mhm.
to our hearts, and we want people to heal. Is just stay with it. Just stay with it. I mean, I will have to say, I sat with it for a while and cried because I was just so happy, that joy and gratitude, and all the people that had helped me on my path to get this message
Yeah.
out to the masses so that they can heal.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever think that you would be a published author?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I
Okay.
did.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did.
It was on my list.
I
I
did. I
get
mean,
it.
I don't think, like, I really thought about it, but I felt like if somebody were to give me a yes or no question, I'd be
Yeah.
like, Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Love that.
yeah. So, and I think because, working in academia as well and teaching
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
pharmacy and, genetics or epigenetics and nutrigenomics and pharmacogenomics, it made sense to me. And I've published other things that are more scientific, uh,
Right.
not an actual book.
Book. Yeah. All right. And so what is next for you? What do you have going on this year, like professionally or personally?
Yeah, so I'll be doing a fair amount of lectures, more in like medical field and that kind of thing for some of our docs to help them recognize and other medical providers. But a lot of book signings are coming up. I'm going to be doing some
Yeah.
regional book signing tours, and we're going to be doing some things online. And yeah, I'm really excited. I'll probably be at some of the colleges and and podcasts and those kinds of things. So
Mhm.
I'm just really open. I'm excited to see where this knowledge really comes um,
Mhm.
up for people. And I do think it's really gonna, I, I think it's gonna pop. I think people are gonna be like, oh my gosh, I get
Yeah.
it, what's
Yeah.
going on. And I feel really excited about us as a cohort just healing some of these old wounds that have just been festering. I'm just really
Yeah.
excited about the opportunity and being part of just a small change in the world of helping people heal
Yeah.
themselves, heal their lineage, setting the field for their future kids and grandkids. I mean,
That's
how does it get
important.
any better than that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I love
amazing.
that. Well, I think that's all the time we have today. Is there anything else that you want to share today, or is there a way that readers can reach out to you to learn more about you and your work?
Sure, yeah. So you can actually check out my website. It's drleahholland.com. And so we'll have events and blogs and all kinds of things. I'll be writing on a regular basis, letting you guys know what's out there, new research that's coming out. Because I mean, I'll be honest with you, every time I turn around, there's a new study, and I'm like, oh, I wish that had been in the book. But you know what? That's why we have like,
Yeah.
podcasts, and we have other formal ways of letting
Yeah, of course.
know about things and even informal ways. So I'll keep you guys abreast of the information that's coming out. And yeah, so that's what I recommend. Also, it's the book's on sale in many different ways. So
Mhm.
Balboa is my publishing company, which is under Hay House. And then also it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, I think Books a Million. I looked and there was like
Wow.
15 different places it was, and it'll be out.
Woo.
Yep,
That's
it says an
awesome.
ebook, a hardback, a softback,
Yeah.
and soon to be it'll be on audio probably within the next month or so. So yeah,
Very
stay
cool.
tuned.
Well, thank you so much, Doctor, for joining me today and taking the time. I think it's such an interesting topic, and I know a lot of people will like it. And I hope if you're listening that you go out and grab Leah's book, and please leave her a review too. It just came out, so she would love reviews. And also, you can also go to your local bookstore too. It has, the ISBN number, and you can
Yes,
actually take that to them, and they can order it for you too. So.
right. Well, Emma, thank you so much for your time. I really am so grateful and appreciative, and I just excited to see what happens in the world, and I wish you
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
best.
Yeah, I wish you all the best in your journey and good luck with all your interviews and book events. That'll be really exciting.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.